I've spoken a lot on this channel about narcissistic partners, narcissistic parents, family members, and exes. But there is one type of narcissistic abuse that almost nobody talks about. I've not seen it anywhere. And that is your neighbour. And if you've ever lived next door to one, you already know that moving isn't always an option. Going no contact doesn't really exist. And every time you leave your front door, your nervous system wonders what today is going to bring. So, if that's you, then stay with me. Because today I'm going to explain why narcissistic neighbours behave the way they do, the 5 things almost all of them have in common, and most importantly, what actually takes their power away. I also want to say this. My neighbours are absolutely lovely. So if they see this, they're lovely. This isn't something I've personally experienced myself. But so many of you have messaged me about this over the years, and I've started to see it a lot in the comments. So I thought this deserves its own conversation. And although I'm talking about neighbours today, what I'm really talking about is something much, much bigger. Because these same dynamics happen with difficult colleagues, family members, people at your children's school, and even friendship groups. So if you've ever felt trapped around someone that you simply can't avoid, then this video is made for you. The first thing to understand is that they don't actually ever want peace. All they want is control. One of the biggest mistakes people make is believing the neighbour wants the same thing that they do. For example, a quiet life, mutual respect, and just to simply get along. A narcissist often doesn't, because to them, peace doesn't feed them. The only thing that does is control. Some neighbours seem to create problems out of absolutely nothing. Parking, the bins, trees, noise, property boundaries, dogs, children. The issue itself, in many cases, almost doesn't matter. The issue is simply the vehicle that allows them to feel powerful, which is why when one problem gets solved, another one mysteriously appears. Have you noticed that? If you've experienced this, let me know in the comments, because this is something I'm really interested in, and it's really become popular recently. I'm genuinely interested to find out what it is they're like. The second thing is that they make the whole neighbourhood feel like a stage. Healthy neighbours will simply live beside you. Narcissistic neighbours will perform. So they will watch who visits, who leaves, what time your lights go off, who parks outside, who talks to who. Everything to them becomes information. And it's not because they're curious or something like that. It's because they're constantly collecting ammunition. And once you realise you're living beside someone who seems to know everyone's business, you start to feel watched. And that can feel really exhausting, because home is supposed to be the one place where your nervous system can finally relax. The third thing is something that catches so many people off guard. And I've talked about it before, and it's the smear campaign. While you're trying to solve the issue directly, they're already talking to everyone else around you. The other neighbours, the Facebook group, the residents committee, and the local WhatsApp chat. They're quietly creating version of events where they're the reasonable one and you're being the difficult neighbour. Not because they necessarily believe it, because they don't. They know what they're doing, but because controlling the narrative gives them control over how people respond to you. One day, you suddenly realise that people, your neighbours, seem colder, more distant from you, and you probably have absolutely no idea why. And that's often because the conversation started without you. The fourth thing It's probably the hardest lesson to learn. They want your reaction more than they want a resolution. So most people think, if I just explain myself clearly, okay, if I stay calm with them, if I prove that what they're saying is wrong, then surely all this will end. But if someone enjoys conflict, your emotion, your reaction is often more rewarding to them than the outcome itself. Every angry reply, every shouting match, every defensive explanation feels like proof that they still have access to your emotions and they have control. Once you understand that, things will start to change. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is not try to win. It's refuse to perform the play they've written for you. And if narcissistic abuse has affected your life in any way, then we have an amazing community called Survive and Thrive that's growing every single day. If you'd like to be surrounded by people who truly understand what you've been through, then I'll leave the link in the description below. I'd love to see you in there. Now, the thing is, the fifth thing is probably, I would say, the biggest mistake that anybody does. Because without even realizing it, they make the narcissistic neighbor their new hobby. So you start checking if their curtains move, wondering if their car is outside, watching to see if they've posted online, talking about them constantly, and planning your day around trying to avoid them. So without realizing it, they've quietly moved into your mind and they're starting to live there rent-free. And that is exactly what they wanted all along. So your home should feel safe and calm. Your thoughts should belong to you. The goal isn't to make them change, because if you've watched my videos, they won't change. It's to stop them occupying your emotional space. Because the day you stop emotionally revolving around them is often the day they lose the thing that they wanted the most in the first place, which is your attention. Now, I'd love to hear from you. Tell me, have you ever had a narcissistic neighbor? What did they do that made you realize something wasn't right? Because I genuinely think this is one of the most overlooked forms of narcissistic abuse, because people often feel embarrassed to talk about it. And I've seen it pop up in the comments so much recently. If you've lived through it, you know how draining it can become. And if this video helped you understand those dynamics a little bit more clearly, then make sure you subscribe. Every week we talk about the kinds of narcissistic behaviors that most people don't recognize until it's far, far too late. So I hope you enjoyed it. Until next time, take care.